I love the book. I finished it a couple of days ago. You know,
Great.
I want to say, DS9 is my all-time favorite Star Trek, and Cisco is my captain.
Right. I can see. Right. That's pretty cool, Chuck. Right.
So honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect. I was hoping it'd be good, but from the bottom of my heart, man, this was a joy for me to read.
Oh man, thank you, man. That I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that because when you're writing in a vacuum.
Mhm.
You don't, and you hope the choices you make are good ones. And that people will get what you're doing. So thank you so much. I appreciate
That's
that.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, Before we get into the autobiography of Ben Sisko, I want to ask you, back in May, you appeared on the Sisko Day and you talked about
Yes.
the book to Sirach and Ryan T. Husk. Sirach Lofton, of course, played Jake Sisko on Deep Space Nine. They're actually both really good friends of mine. So that was a really fun interview. I just rewatched it. um,
Wow. Great.
what was that like for you, talking about the book about Sisko to Sisko's TV son, who Avery actually loves like a son in real life?
No, right, right, exactly. Mr. Brooks loves Ciroc, loved him like a son. Um, I'll be really honest with you. Before the interview, it was starting to trip me out a little bit. I was like, this is, and my girlfriend was like, "Oh, this is weird because you're going to be, having an interview with Jake Sisko," and I'm like, "Yeah." And then I was like, you know what? I can't think about that. I'm just going to do an interview and talk about this project and this book. And so, I mean, well, how much can you really put it out of your head? I tried to put it out of my head and just sit there and talk with them. But what I don't know if it came across in the interview, but we had a really, really good conversation. And I didn't know them and they don't know me, of course. And I think by the end of the conversation, we started to really like gel and have a really kind of like some energy was going on. And I was just so pleased at that because I've been watching Jake Sisko 7 years, well, more than 7 years now, 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And so, you hope that you meet this individual and that they're cool with you and you're cool with them and you don't say anything stupid. I don't want to say anything stupid. You know what I'm saying, right? And we had a really, really great time. And I don't know if it was actually if it was recorded or maybe it was like right after. I was telling him like I just really want to do the book and him and not only him but everyone on the cast and crew justice
Mhm.
because it's a great show, but a lot of people put a lot of hard work into it. And if the autobiography isn't on a certain level, it's going to, it's not going to in any way reflect on the beautiful stories and work of Deep Space Nine. But I think it would leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth. It's like, oh man, this was not good after 30 years of waiting. So I was really, I told him, I said, God, really, I'm going to do my best to do justice. Cause I was in writing at the time when we were having that conversation.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
listen, we're not going to spoil the book, but
Right.
I thought it was fantastic. It is a true autobiography of Ben Sisko, written in his voice,
Right.
and you truly captured his voice. I heard Avery in my head as I read it.
Wow.
Um, and that's honestly the best compliment I can pay you because it worked.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
How did you channel Avery while writing?
Man, I mean, like I talked a little bit about with on the seventh rule, it's not easy channeling Mr. Avery Brooks because originally I went to like earlier things he'd done, A Man Called Hawk and Spencer for Hire, to try and get a feel of a younger Sisko. But Avery Brooks is not, he's such a great actor that he's not, everything he brings in Star Trek, everything he brings in Spencer, everything he brings in Hawk is totally different. So I couldn't go to other works he's done and use that. And I've been able to do that sometimes with other actors like Sir Patrick Stewart. I can sometimes pull from different places from when he was younger and stuff when I write. Or even Sir Patrick Stewart in interviews.
Mhm.
His cadence is close to what he's doing for Picard. But the cadence for Sisko is very different than the cadence for Mr. Brooks. Mr. Avery Brooks is very much more relaxed when he speaks. Mm-hmm. Sisko was relaxed, but he still has this. It's this thing that he does. It's like almost like a uniformity, and he's like this everyman, but it's just not as relaxed as Sisko. The best we got was in The Pale Moonlight, where it's just like a 45-minute monologue, and I could hear at certain points Avery Brooks was slipping in to the Sisko dialogue. You could just hear little things. So I watched that episode a lot.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I watch it a lot anyway.
right. Anyway, right. Because right. That was a thing. I would find myself like just watching Deep Space Nine. I'm like, no, that's not the mission, Derek. But I watched it maybe like 4 times back to back in the same day. And then I was like, all right, you know what? I'm done. Turn it off. And I never watched another Deep Space Nine episode until the book was finished. I mean, I would like look at little clips here and there on YouTube for certain things, but I never watched another Deep Space Nine episode because once I had it, I was like, you got it, and just go. That kind of
right. Well, it really read like, and it felt like Sisko was back with us. And then you ingeniously wove in Sisko's whole DS9 mythology. You had Jake, you had the prophets who have to be there, and even Benny Russell is addressed. And the way you did it was so clever. Tell me how you worked it all in, like the challenges of that. He has a dense mythology. Just one character has all this stuff going on.
It was after. I mean, of course, I was gonna. When Titan Books and George Sanderson approached me and said that they were looking at me for this project, primarily because of the 2016 short story I wrote, "The Dreamer and the Dream" for Strange New Worlds 50th anniversary. They read that and they really liked it, and they approached me for this. I knew there were going to be hurdles, but there's just so many hurdles in this book. He's a father. He's a widower. He is himself a son. His family is such a close-knit unit. He has siblings that aren't really discussed. They're in canon, but they're not discussed really or seen on screen. All of these things became incredible challenges. And then it was, okay, well, what do I want to put into this book? What do I want to say about his past? And a lot of it, I just do what I do. I try and strip things down and not think about what fans want or anything like that. But I looked at, honestly, Gene Roddenberry's initial vision for Star Trek. And I went back to that. With CBS, you have to give them an outline first. And so Titan and CBS wanted, of course, an outline first. So we're going to just let me know, right? And so I took a few days once I got in the project, and I just thought. I would stay in the shower for like an hour. My girlfriend's like, why are you in the shower for an hour? It's like, I'm thinking. And so, I would that was my place. I'm being really honest. It was like my Zen place, man. And I would just think. And so I realized that this was an opportunity to not just talk about Ben, but the writers of Deep Space Nine gave me such fertile soil and material to work with that I could make a commentary about the 24th century. I could make a commentary about New Orleans. And in doing that, it would reflect back on Ben and his family, Yeah. And so then I went back to what Gene Roddenberry started, because Gene Roddenberry says World War III has to happen. And then after that is when we start to come together. And then the Vulcans, show up. So I was like, you know what? Let's start from there. And then once I had that, I was like, well, you know what? I didn't really want to just talk about Ben and his father. I pushed it back because I knew my grandparents were very influential in my life. And I was like, why not? Why not take this opportunity to show a lineage of a Sisko lineage, And so then I created his great, not his great, but his grandfather and grandmother. And once I did that and put all that in the outline, took me a while to write the outline, get it the way I wanted it. I think it was like about a 10 to 15 page outline, something like that. And that got sent off to CBS and they approved it right away, which was really cool. They didn't really have any comments about it. They approved it, and then it was off to the races, So The one thing though is that once I did that outline, I knew that I was going to be locked into whatever I decided. So
Hmm.
I tried to think of things that would create a. Ben Sisko, in my opinion, is the most formed captain and one of the most formed characters in Star Trek. So I had to deliver that in the book as well. And I know our formative years are like between 6 to 10. A lot of things happen that create the adults that we are. That's happened in my life. So I just did a lot with his childhood, and I spent a lot of time with his family and his childhood, so that the reader could see this is where it all came from. This is the foundation of who this man is.
Yeah.
And I think it worked.
It did. Yeah. I mean, so much of the book was about Ben's childhood, his upbringing in New Orleans, his siblings, who, like you said, we never saw on the show. I completely forgot he even had siblings. And I know a lot about Deep Space Nine and Cisco, and I forgot about this completely. But that was really satisfying. New Orleans, the whole family lineage. And then
Right.
there were also, like, as he's going through life, going through Starfleet, the Academy, you sprinkled in some amazing cameos, which we won't spoil. But
No, but yeah.
but he's kind of like Forrest Gump. He crossed paths with some amazing people. You just won't expect
It's like yeah, man. Also, jazz has a part to play in his life, and so it has a part to play in the book. It's in several places. But yeah, some of those cameos come back to things that I've always wanted to do, and there's a chapter that you probably know what I'm talking about. It's just a character that I've always wanted to write, and that character is like was like they had like a one-off in a Star Trek season, and I was like, oh man, I really like that character, and I did my research, and I was like, that character is still around. I can do something with that, and so I put that character in, and I put it in a way and a place that I think made sense, not just because of something I wanted to do, but it makes sense for Ben, and it moves his life forward. So I think you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I do. I do.
Yeah.
But they got to read the book to find
They got to
out.
read the book, right?
So, as you fleshed out Cisco's life story, did anyone he knew kind of emerge in a new light for you as you were kind of discovering them? Like, did any of his loved ones or even his enemies, like, as you were like writing it down, like you realized, oh, I get them now in a way I didn't quite understand before.
That's a great question, John. I'd say actually, yeah, two. Well, yeah, no, I never really even thought about that. But yeah, well, his father to begin with, his
Mhm.
father. I started to see his father in a different light, just because the autobiography didn't only become about Ben, but in writing his family, I had to figure out certain things and a lot of it I got from Joseph Sisko and just understanding of like why is Joseph the way he is when we see him,
Mhm.
why is he? And I was like, there's got to be, and I have to explain that. I can't just, if I have Joseph the same way he is in the show, and if I have him that same way in the book, then Joseph starts to become a caricature.
Mhm.
He's not a full person. So you have to take Joseph Sisko and explain how he got there as well, not only his son. And so in doing that, I started to understand him, and then everything started to fold back on where they live and all that. So definitely Joseph. Um, um, who else was I thinking of? Oh, Curzon for sure.
Mhm.
You know, Curzon. I got Curzon in a whole new light because writing Curzon was very interesting. Writing Curzon was very interesting. There's this one scene when he's talking to Curzon. Well, a couple of scenes actually. Not thinking about him. He's talking to Curzon, and I was like, how is this going to go? Because they have a very interesting relationship as we see, but then how did that start?
Mhm.
What was the origins of that? And I was like, oh, I got to do that justice too. There were so many challenges and so many things that I realized once I was immersed in the writing that I couldn't just pass over. I had to really stop and take those moments because I think as readers, we want to see how those relationships started,
Mhm.
Um, So yeah, those two characters mainly really stood out for me, I think.
Now, I'm glad you brought up Curzon because, when you consider the kind of man, the kind of person Ben is, and his mentor, Curzon, is like, you don't see a lot of dirty old man mentors in Star Trek, It's the weirdest juxtaposition when you think about it.
Right.
And then
I needed to explain that. Right. And then Dax is so different from Curzon, and we've seen some of that arc and that, how Curzon felt about Dax. And, we've seen some of that arc. So I had to think about all of that and entwine all of that. So in a lot of ways, this wasn't just the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko, but I'm touching on these individuals and giving you insights into them, hopefully giving you insights into them that will explain things. So when you see him on screen, like, that makes sense now. That's why he's like that. And I understand Dax a little bit better and Jadzia, even Curzon and Jadzia a little bit better. So yeah, hopefully, right? So that was the goal. Yeah.
And you mentioned it earlier. I was wondering as I was reading the book, is he going to address In the Pale Moonlight? And then I was like, oh, he did, and you did it in a clever way. I like how you did that because it's still a secret. It's
still a secret, right? And it's funny because it's called The Autobiography of Benjamin Sisko, but in my head, what it is first and foremost is a father talking to a son. And I don't think that's too much of a spoiler to say, it's a father talking to a son. And so I always kept that in mind, and Ben knows what he's doing, right? So if he's talking to Jake, there are things he will say, there are things he will not say, because he's still who he is. He's still a Starfleet captain. He's still who he is. So even if he's confiding, there were things he will say and not say. And so then I came up with that idea, and that idea pleased a lot of people at Titan. They were like, "Oh, that's clever. Yeah, so they like that because and it's a nice nod to the fans and the readers. Is like, yeah, I know you're looking for that. I know. and there it is, right?
Yeah. So before I let you go, this has been really amazing. Before I let you go, Star Trek has so many great captains. Everybody has their favorite, and I know you love Kirk like you. I also love Kirk, especially as he gets older. I understand Kirk more and more. I relate to him more and more. But Sisko stands apart, and in some ways, he stands above the others. So having documented his whole life story now, you're an expert on him. What makes Sisko so special that we just love him so much? DS9 fans love him so much. He's still, he's the emissary.
Yeah. No, I think what it is, even if we don't realize it consciously, is that he's the most balanced captain that we've ever seen. All of these other captains are admirable, really great people, but they all have issues. They usually aren't really good at relationships, and they're always struggling with personal relationships. I mean, you can go through the whole list. Kirk, Picard, Archer, Burnham, Pike. They all have these issues with relationships. Burnham's getting better at it, but she started in a horrible place. Pike, right? Pike's family is his crew. He's not doing good relationships. When we meet Ben Sisko, he's already figured that out. He's figured out that, life-work balance. And what's so devastating is that he's figured it out and he's lost his wife, but once he overcomes that, and when he hooks up with his crew and meets his crew and picks his crew for Deep Space Nine, they become another family. And, we see over 7 years a man that can lead and manage and not micromanage, and give his people the flexibility and room that they need. He's a very balanced human being. And as I was thinking about that, and as I was writing that, I was like, I really have to do justice to this and show where that balance came from, and if I do it right, if Sisko is here when we see him, then I need to, as a curve, come up to here by the end of the book. And I think I achieved that, where he doesn't start whole, because no one does. None of us do. When we're 8, 10 years old, we're trying to figure stuff out. We don't know, and we make mistakes and things happen. But over our lives, the people we encounter, and the things that happen, we learn from them, hopefully. And that's what I was trying to show with his life.
Well, you did an amazing job. I thought the book was fantastic. I want to also let you know that, when I started reading the book and I got to the introduction by Jake Sisko, I took a photo of it. I texted it to Sirach, and Sirach was like, "Wow!" Right? I was like, "You're in the book.
You're in the book. Oh yeah, you're definitely in the book."
Yeah. So he really liked that a lot. And I also there's a little shout out that Nog mentioned the seventh rule of acquisition, and I sent that to Ryan too because and he loved that. So I know I haven't read the book yet, but I know they're both dying to read it.
Yes,
and I've already
said intentional. To put that in. That was intentional. Just because of Aaron Eisenberg, I spoke to him once on Facebook. He was really generous with me. This was years ago, and so I wanted to do a nod. And at the last episode of Deep Space Nine, the last 3 characters we see Kira in her office. Then Nog comes in, and then Kira walks Deep Space Nine, and then she's with Jake. So when this book picks up, those are the first 3 characters that we see.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to continue that, even if it wasn't conscious to the reader. Over time, I want people to realize, that I'm bridging that. I'm saying, hey, we're back home, and you're in good hands, So,
well, Derek, this was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for that book. All right, man. I hope to talk to you soon. Maybe
you too. Thank you so much. Thank you, and I will, and it's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, take care, man.